I recently came across this book called The Power Play by Tim Higgins. It's on a founding history of Tesla and how Elon Musk made this huge company. The interesting thing is they have a whole chapter dedicated to Peter Rawlinson under Special Forces. I'll go over that and the contributions of Peter Rawlinson to Tesla and why they are important. Towards the end, I'll leave you with a video, a rare video from Lucid, where they had a van and they competed that van on a drag race with Ferrari and Tesla. And you won't believe who won that drag race. So let's get started. Under the Special Forces, Chapter 9 in the book, Peter Rawlinson went straight from the Los Angeles International Airport to Santa Monica for dinner. So he was called by Elon Musk basically to discuss, because Elon had this Model S going on. He already had a whole project, a whole team who was working on Model S, but he had something going on and he didn't feel things were going in the right direction. So he wanted some outside help. And that's where he reached out to Peter Rawlinson. And this chapter starts off by introducing Peter Rawlinson and how he came abroad. He was first working with Jaguar, and he took Jaguar because Jaguar was a small company back then, and he was able to perform his duties and he was able to do some innovation and R&D over there. But when Jaguar was founded by Ford, the bureaucracy, the automaker's bureaucracy started to creep into the company's operations, and he left. He got frustrated. And that was the main reason he didn't go into big companies and he chose to work with small companies. And he left Jaguar and he started making his own roadster in his own garage. And it was basically shown in the Road and Truck magazine. Then it goes about how Elon Musk over the dinner was asking about Model S project and how the concerns that he had. So he spoke about how the team in Detroit had drafted a plan to hire 1,000 engineers by Christmas, and that was going to cost him about 100 million per year. And to that, Elon said, I don't have the budget for that, and I can't even recruit the recruiters to do that. How many would you have? So he basically he said, okay, this is good. They said they're going to need 1,000 engineers to make Model S. But Rawlinson, what do you think, and how much do you need? And this is interesting. Let me think. Rawlinson said, as he did the mental math, remembering how many engineers he had used for projects at Lotus. He also worked at Lotus. By June, I'd have about 20. By July, August, 25. And I think 40 to 45 by Christmas. Think about it. Those guys said 1,000. And this guy said only 40 to 45. Elon was perplexed. That's 1/20th of the size. And he gave a very good reason about it. It's too much for this video, but I'll go over that if you're interested. Next, he talks about how he was more focused on computer simulations, and that dropped the cost of Model S considerably. Because instead of doing these road tests, Rawlinson promoted the idea of computer simulations. So he did computer simulations, and Deepak Ahuja, who was the CFO, he was basically brought in from Ford. He went over the numbers and came away impressed by Rawlinson's numbers. Because you think about it, this was a political game going on. They already had a Model S team going on. They already had a whole network, a whole ecosystem was built up, and they were building this Model S. And Rawlinson came in and said, hey, what you guys are doing is wrong and it's too expensive. And he gave the answers and he gave the solutions. And everyone said, hey, if you believe this guy, because Rawlinson had no other background to support his claims. So they said, if you believe in Rawlinson, this whole project is going to go away and we might end up in bankruptcy. But he explained what was his numbers and the computer simulations and how it could reduce the cost. So the CFO got impressed. If they were able to design a vehicle with so few people, it could give Tesla a competitive edge on cost against the biggest players. And this is revolutionary, he told Rawlinson. I have never seen anything like this. This is coming from a guy who is very much experienced in the automotive industry. And then this is talking about the Model S, the problems that he was facing. So Rawlinson, when he arrived, he didn't have a proper direction, or he didn't have a full information of what he was going to be doing, and Musk just let him explore the company and come back and answer to him. So Rawlinson was studying the Model S team, the team who was making the Model S project, and Rawlinson came back to Musk and said, I'm sorry, but it's going to have to stop. we're going to have to stop the program. So he's basically talking about the years and the millions of dollars that they had already spent. I think about 60 million Musk had already spent in making the Model S. And Rawlinson came back and said, you need to stop that program. And Musk turned to face him again. All of it? Yes, all of it. So he's basically changing the whole section. And the reasoning he gives is very interesting. And Musk agreed to him. And this is interesting. He was later called by that Detroit team, the team who was making Model S. They called Rawlinson to come down and say, hey, you big guy, you're trying to give us all these false claims. Prove us. Why do you think that we are doing wrong and what you claim is correct? Come down and explain to us. So they asked Rawlinson to come down to Detroit and basically have a debate with the team who was making that Model S back then. So later, Rawlinson flew to Detroit and decided to call on the head of MB Tech's office, who laid out his plans for an electric car based on the E-Class. So they were using the Mercedes E-Class, and they were basically using the chassis of that car and the suspensions and everything coming from the Mercedes, and they were building their own vehicle, their own powertrain of Tesla on top of that back then. So he told the fledgling Tesla executive to show him why their plan wouldn't work. So they basically demanded, or to prove your points, hey, you're talking about this, explain why. So Rawlinson proceeded to pour over a list of about 300 parts, one by one. He sat on the floor explaining why each part wasn't suitable until after several hours, and having reached the 65th part, Rawlinson was cut off, and they said, I have seen enough. The German said, you are right. There is no way this is ever going to make sense. He phoned Musk to withdraw their proposal. It was Rawlinson's show now. So this was something amazing to look into. Now next, I'll leave you with a video from, basically this was a rare video back from 2016 where they had a drag race between the vehicle Edna. They used to call it Edna back then, and before Lucid it used to be called as Ativa. So Ativa's Edna, the van between Tesla and the Ferrari.